Hey everyone, just give me one moment while I invite our special guest.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, there you go. Perfect.
All right, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thank you for having me.
Hi. So, can you just introduce yourself and let everyone know who you are?
Sure. My name's Aakankschit Nandkeolyar. I am currently a PhD student at the University of California Irvine. I'm studying pharmaceutical sciences, focusing on computational chemistry. I graduated from Drexel with my undergraduate degree in 2020 and my master's degree in 2021. So, like following the research route right now to try to figure out what I want to do later on. But yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. So, can you tell me a little bit about your Drexel journey, how you ended up at Drexel, and what made you choose biomed?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I ended up at Drexel mainly because I was very much interested in their human performance concentration. Um, I I'm an international student from India, so I found out about Drexel mainly through the web. Didn't know too much about it before that. I really like the curriculum, especially related to human performance. I don't think there are a lot of programs out there which focus a lot on biodynamics and mainly statics and design focused curriculums for biomedical engineering. And so I sort of like decided that I really wanted to go there and do research in human performance. But over my time at Drexel, my mind sort of changed, and there were a lot of other opportunities that were also available. And I would definitely say that the co-op program as well helped me sort of find other things that I was interested in.
Mhm.
So, yeah, definitely something different and totally worthwhile for me.
Yeah, I know co-op is like a big forming idea. I actually started like a super heavy research track, and then after my first co-op, we've kind of transitioned more into like a biotechnology type of role, which is really cool. Which is such a unique program of Drexel, which is really nice to help you form your ideas. So, when you were thinking of going to college, did you always want to go to college in the United States, or did you just find Drexel and that was like a perfect fit?
When I was thinking about college, I think I did apply to colleges in India as well. Um, but I was interested in coming to the US because I was interested in biomedical engineering.
Mhm.
And about 6 to 7 years back, it wasn't a very big major in India. You had biotechnology, but there wasn't necessarily anything dedicated to human performance or tissue engineering. A lot of the courses were focused on biochemical engineering. And
Mhm.
I was more inclined to do something with mechanical engineering related to sports medicine.
Mhm.
And so I sort of went on a shopping list of different schools to try to see where I wanted to go. And like I had mentioned, Drexel's curriculum with human performance was very interesting to me. And the co-op system also seemed really viable because I did have a huge, strong belief that practical, real world experience actually helps ground you into a better engineer as compared to just staying in school for 4 years and then just emerging as this new workforce member and then trying to figure out where you wanted to go. So I also thought about it in terms of just trying to get a number of different experiences. And I think with the three co-op program, that was like super helpful as well. And so it was sort of like I wanted to go have like a real world experience and then at the same time also study like somewhat more biomechanics focused research. And so I sort of just ended up gravitating towards Drexel because I was really interested in their work.
Mhm. What's so cool is we actually have like six different concentrations for people who are watching this and don't know that. And kind of how the new curriculum works, which is the one I came into, is you kind of take all those core classes for all the different concentrations, like within your, it's already in your plan of study. So I'm still taking statics and dynamics, even though I'm planning to do tissue engineering. So it really gives you a great overview and gives you that chance to kind of look into things and decide how you want to apply for co-ops and things like that, which is super cool. And I'm actually really enjoying statics and dynamics. So it's not something like traditionally I would have taken if you're just studying tissue engineering. So, and just to segue a little bit, when you came to the US, did you use ISSS, which is our International Students Service, at all? How did that work?
So coming to the US, it was sort of a pretty smooth process. ISSS was very, very helpful in sort of like guiding me through what documentation I needed, where I needed to go, what were my deadlines. Um, and I believe like they reached out to me like after like a week or two after I'd accepted the offer. And they were very, very supportive in the sense like they sent my I-20, which is this document that you need to actually apply to get a student visa to come to the US. And anytime I had any questions related to getting visa stamping, when I could actually enter the country, and how to maintain my status, they were a very good resource to actually reach out to. And there are a lot of questions like that come and go as international students come in, especially in maintaining your status. And it can get a little bit complicated when you're working in co-op or like doing internships and such. But yeah, ISSS was definitely a very good resource. They sort of also gave us a good orientation of how to adapt to life in the US, how to get used to work life in the US, and also how to make the most of our experience as international students while trying to blend in with the culture, and also get a lot more out of it in terms of like introducing ourselves, introducing our separate cultures, and meeting other people, and sort of actually enjoying America for the melting pot of cultures that it actually is. So they were very helpful in that aspect of it. And also, anytime you wanted to travel outside the country, it was pretty easy to like just drop off your I-20 to get it signed by anyone at ISSS. And if you needed to take time off, or you just wanted to like go back home for a vacation or over a trimester, then you could always talk to them, and they would sort of try to work with you and your academic advisor in order to figure out how to move your classes around and how you can take some time off and work with things. So I was pretty happy with ISSS. Like even when the pandemic hit, they were just really good at keeping up with documents and making sure that I had all of my paperwork together and that the transition was going to be smooth, and that I didn't have any issues. And yeah, like your international student, the advisors there are also available anytime by email. So it was also nice to sort of like have someone on call, just so that you can email and just be like, hey, I'm like joining this co-op, like I've got these questions about how I need to maintain my status, like I have some questions about like what documents I need for onboarding. I'm leaving the country, like what documents do I need while coming back? Like this is what I have right now, or like renewing the I-20 every time. So they were pretty flexible as well. I remember one time for my first co-op, I had to move out of Philadelphia, and you renew your I-20 because they update your status as working when you actually get an internship. And so it's sort of like they allowed me to have someone else come and pick up the copy, and so I could then like have them mail me the I-20 to help with my onboarding at the company. So they were very, very helpful and flexible, and I really appreciate their help throughout my time at Drexel.
That's awesome. That sounds amazing. I'm so glad we have a service like that that can help people. So what would you say is your biggest piece of advice or the biggest change you felt when you moved here? Like, what would you want to tell international students now?
I think when I moved to the US, I was very goal oriented and just wanted to keep to myself and study most of the time. It's a big responsibility for a lot of international students, and it can also be sort of a little bit of a culture shock because coming from India, I felt that there was a lot more freedom in college over here. And I had this fixed mindset that I just wanted to sit and study and like not talk as much and just mind my own business. But I think if students like open up to the idea of making new friends like outside their cultural boundaries, and just meeting new people, networking. I think that's like the best experience for any international student who's coming to study in the US. I think most people are very nervous. Could be a language barrier, could just be because it's different from what they have seen in their countries. But I think that's the whole point of coming to study in the US, is just meeting a number of different people from diverse backgrounds, trying to understand where they come from, and then trying to learn from everyone's stories. So for me, it was just meeting a lot of new people at Drexel, like making like lifelong friends at Drexel who I'm still in touch with, finding my own community, trying to find myself in that place, and not just completely focusing on the academics. I think like I met some of my best friends through my classes. So I would say classes do bring you close to people, but at the same time, taking time off and just getting to know other people, and also building your own network is just as equally important. And I think people don't pay enough attention to it. So yeah, Drexel kind of opened me up to just having a bigger network of friends, and just, meeting up and having a lot of different good memories together.
Yeah, and I think the biomed community, especially like when I look at my other friends, like we're so tight. And that was kind of like just thrown in my face too, because my whole entire, so we had some overlap at Drexel, but I guess we would have never met each other because my whole freshman year, I started in 2020, was all virtual. And then I was a fall winter co-op. So then I was actually working in Connecticut with Behringer Ingelheim. So I was off campus in Connecticut there. So this spring term, which is the first quarter of my sophomore year, was my first time ever on campus. And it was just amazing to actually like see the people in my classes face to face and get to know them. And it's created like great friendships, even just in one quarter. So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's really great, this like little biomed community we have. And speaking of co-ops, you started talking about your first one a little bit. Can you describe your co-ops and what you did for them?
Yeah, sure. I had a number of different co-ops because I was just interested in getting a whole breadth of experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've seen a lot of people like stay in the same co-op for the entire duration of their degree. And while I do respect that if you have like a good co-op, I feel like the whole point of the three co-op system is for you to like sort of just get a sampling of where you want to be at the end of the day. And my first co-op was at this company called Autodesk. They actually manufacture AutoCAD, which is
Yeah.
a CAD design software. And I moved out to Boston for that and worked with their education team, and also partly with the research team. I was mainly doing demos of some of their newer softwares, and also helping a team in London test out some features that they were going to add to the software. And at the time, I think we also ended up using the software in some of Drexel's classes. I think it was called Fusion 360. I don't know if they still
I
use it
was
or
gonna say,
not.
like, we know Autodesk, MATLAB. Well, MATLAB's not part of them, but
Mhm.
Fusion 360 and AutoCAD. There's entire classes dedicated to them. So yeah.
Yeah. At the time, like Fusion 360 was very big, and they were looking to introduce some newer features into it, which were more like optimization oriented and
Mm-hmm.
lightweighting parts and stuff like that. And so it was a very big jump for me because it was pretty scary to just like move to another city and then try to
Yeah.
find an apartment and then try to figure out the paperwork and stuff like that. But I have to say, like, the Drexel co-op advisors just were amazing. They were very supportive. And I remember like I was missing some kind of signature or something, or they had not updated something in their system. And my co-op advisor literally called me and then was like, okay, don't do anything. We just need to update your preferences in the system so that we know that you are on co-op. And that was also my first co-op was sort of like an independent search thing. I was working in a research lab at the time. And it so happened that I met my manager who was working at Autodesk, and sort of like as we got talking, we sort of decided, okay, I could come and work with them for some time just to gain more experience in research.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, it was a very different experience because I worked on the education team. So I was like doing demos, organizing workshops, just sort of being that student who kind of like knew how the software actually worked. And in case any educators wanted to adopt it into the classroom, like I would sort of help them design their curriculum, design some instructional guides, see what their students need. And it gave me a lot of, it taught me a lot about how much effort actually goes into organizing these classes, getting them together. And it was definitely an interesting experience because it was mostly in software, and I did get a chance to actually work on actual software development. But it wasn't very like hardcore software development. So I didn't think too much about it because at the time I was still interested in doing a lot more medical device or human performance or sports medicine related research. And for my second co-op, I ended up working at a company not too far from Philadelphia. It's based out in Reading, PA. It's called Teleflex, and they actually manufacture like drug-eluting stents and cardiovascular decongestors. Basically, a lot of different stents that you would actually use to deliver medication, or you would place valves in your heart, things like that. And that co-op was, it was a very different atmosphere from the software co-op, because I think in tech right now, there's a lot of push towards freedom and a lot more resources. Like we used to have like lunches quite often in Autodesk, and there was always some event or the other going on. And so like it, when I moved to Teleflex, it was a much more traditional engineering environment, and it's just usually people would come into work. Like occasionally we would have some get-togethers, or the interns would meet, but it was very formal, and that was a very different experience for me as well. I learned a lot over the co-op. I got the chance to work with 3 different teams simultaneously, which was a lot of work, but at the same time, a lot of learning. I learned a lot more about experimental design, a lot about statistics, organizing samples, getting things together. And it was sort of like my first introduction also to laboratory work, since I'd not done any kind of laboratory work until then. And overall, it was definitely a challenging co-op in terms of just time commitment and then learning experiences. But that's sort of like how I see co-ops per se. I think it's very, very important for a student to challenge themselves when they're on co-op, because a lot of opportunities that arise later on once you graduate come from being extremely competitive during your co-ops. And that also helps you to meet a lot of people. And especially in Teleflex, I think I sort of was like learning how to like approach people who I didn't know and just be like, hey, I'm an intern. I'm interested in learning like what you're doing. And I think like that's one of the most valuable aspects of a co-op is like it's so hard to do that when you're just a student and there are random
Yeah.
strangers around. Like you can't just go up to anyone and just say, oh, hi, like I'm so and so, like I'm in this field, like would you mind, like do you have like a few minutes to like talk about this? But like when you're in a company and you see other people who've been doing biomedical engineering or medical engineering for like the last 20 odd years, you start realizing, oh wow, like it's not just like the work and the salary, but it's also just being able to have access to these people and to learn from their experiences. So I was very notorious for like sending emails to people who worked in different departments and just being like, hey, I'm so and so, I'm a new intern. Do you have a few minutes to chat? I really wanted to learn more about the work that you do. And so that sort of like set me up really well. And I made a lot of friends. And even though it was a very formal and sort of a little bit more reserved environment, pretty much like most of the people knew me basically because I'd just gone up and asked them something or the other. And it taught me a lot about medical device, also CAD work for medical device. And like I said, experimental design, planning out experiments, working with other scientists, trying to collaborate. Because collaboration was there in Autodesk, but it's sort of like software is a little bit more closed off, in my opinion. Like you do your own thing, and then after that, you sort of interface with someone else if you have any questions. But when you're doing like medical device research, there are a lot of different facets that are moving simultaneously. And so I had the lucky chance to like attend some of these bigger meetings as they were developing new products. And so a lot of times, like the head of the meeting would be like, "Oh, we asked you to do this experiment. Like, so how did that turn out?" So even that opportunity of just sitting there with all the senior managers and then being like, "Okay, I did this, but this didn't work, but this did work on this product." It was definitely an experience that was, worth exploring and like coming into. And so that sort of set me up for my third co-op. And for my third co-op, I was interested in exploring the world of big pharma. So I ended up at GSK as an automation scientist. And in my opinion, that co-op was, I think, my best co-op. My co-op sort of just built up all the way. I took a lot of whatever I learned at Teleflex and Autodesk and sort of started applying that at GSK, because GSK was a very big company. There were close to 5,000 or 6,000 employees on that campus. And there were a number of different departments. There was a pilot plant that was producing chemicals and prototype drugs and things like that on site. And so you had all these different facets of testing. And I had a really cool job, which was literally automating the experiments and working with robots. And I had a very, very supportive manager who never said no to anything I said. So I guess I'm sort of here thanks to his support at the end of the day. Shout out to Matt if you're here. But he sort of like was very, very open to ideas from me on things I could work on, things to take the projects forward, and didn't hesitate to actually put me on multiple projects simultaneously. And so I sort of like, I got into that same groove of just, meeting different people from different departments. There were more than like 10 buildings at GSK, and they had this hot test system. So sometimes I would be interested in just like sitting in another building and then seeing how other teams function, or like just getting to know other people. And so it sort of turned into this co-op where I was a laboratory automation scientist. I was doing experiments, but I got exposed a lot more to translational biology, working in pharmacometrics, pharmacodynamics, and then also looking at computational chemistry, which is stuff that I do right now. And I also got a chance to like sit and work with those teams, see what life is like in those different teams, because it turns out that, working in one team, you get exposure to like how that team works. But when you work with multiple teams, it's also good to take some time off and then see if you can get adjusted to work life in another team. And that sort of gives you exposure to like, okay, maybe I'm interested in going into this because I feel like this space is a lot more of like my jam. Like the vibes are good from this team at the end of the day. And it was a very nice co-op. I would definitely say commuting was a little hard for me because as an international student, I didn't have a car. And so GSK had a set of shuttles that would convey you to like get you to the facility. But I would wake up at like 5 a.m. just to get ready and then bus myself all the way over there. But it was totally worth it. I got a lot out of it. I published 2 papers and also ended up meeting my current doctoral advisor while I was at GSK. Tried to attend a lot of events, network with people, and also when time came for like grad school suggestions and things like that, I think that was also where I sort of started shifting my focus towards pharmaceuticals and working more with computational biology as compared to biomechanics. And no, if I looked at it like 4 years ago and then just been like, oh, I'm going to work in computational biology or chemistry, I would have definitely said, no, I'm not going to work in computational chemistry or biology. It's definitely something that I don't want to do right now. But I think that's one of the advantages of a co-op program is you can make it into one co-op and just all of a sudden discover that you have this interest or affinity for a topic that you may not have necessarily covered in school. And so that was sort of like my journey of like, I got there I sort of like got more interested in biochemistry and sort of more like computational chemistry and pharmacokinetics and so on. And then after that, like there was a lot of encouragement from everyone there towards like going to grad school, like getting advanced degree, like doing more research. And the research at GSK was very, very enriching and sort of taught me a lot. So I was very much interested in pursuing that later on. I was like, I want to do cool stuff. So I think going the research path is something I'm definitely interested in like working on. And so I just ended up going towards that path. And I guess I'm here right now.
That's awesome. So you had a more research-based third co-op. How did that transition back to Drexel in doing a master's and finding advisors and thesis people at Drexel?
Yeah, I think coming back to Drexel, I was still in biomechanics, and I sort of realized that I wanted to go more towards bioinformatics and computational biology. And so I made the decision to get my master's focused completely on like bioinformatics and computational biology. And that's all because Drexel, like you said, has those six concentrations, and bioinformatics is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And till like my co-op, I had not actually realized how much fun it actually was. And so it sort of like led me to go back towards Drexel. And then I think I graduated during COVID, and I thought that I just didn't want to travel or go anywhere at the time,
Yeah.
because Drexel was like home was home, and I just wanted to stay in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And like again, shout out to Natalia Bros, who's the graduate advisor.
Mm-hmm.
Super, super, super nice and helpful person. But she was a very good resource in helping me put my program together. And I was, at the end of the day, I'm interested in working as a research scientist in the pharmaceutical industry. So I really wanted something that sort of like reflected that interest in industry, more than like going towards something that was more academic focused. And so I sort of like had worked with the translational biology team at GSK. And so I reached out, and then I was like, hey, like I'm doing this master's. I really want to do a master's thesis. Do you have any like problems or like any kind of issues that you're going to tackle right now? And do you think that any of these issues could be turned into a potential master's thesis project? I would definitely be interested in working with your team on this. I would love to hear from you more. And I was lucky enough for the time that they reached out to me, and they were like, yeah, for sure. Like we have a potential project that maybe a little bit more software focused, more machine learning and AI oriented, but it definitely seems like a viable master's project, and it would definitely be helpful to us. And so over the summer, I think in 2020, as I was waiting to like get into like for the master's to start, I sort of just like stitched together what the project was going to be, um, what kind of classes I needed to take, also who was going to be my advisor, because it was a very like pharmacokinetics oriented topic,
Mm-hmm.
and there are not many professors at Drexel for that. But Drexel, that was one of the best things about Drexel Biomed, is they were just open to just having students do like research in new topics. And
Mm-hmm.
so they said they allowed me to like keep my like keep the co-workers from GSK, because they were scientists themselves. They got their PhDs on as my primary advisors, and then get a secondary Drexel advisor. I was lucky enough to work with Dr. Hassan Ayaz, and he was willing to like take me under his wing and then sort of like assist me with the more hardcore programming aspects of things. And also got really lucky with Dr. Andres Crete being my committee chair,
Mm-hmm.
and also just being super supportive in trying to get me through the whole process. Because at the time when I put everything together, like fall term had hit, and like that's when PhD applications are due. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I have to like manage this master's out, and then I'm also applying to these different degree programs. I need to figure out how this timeline is going to work. And so there were a lot of conversations with Natalia, my advisors, with Dr. Crete as well. There was a lot of support and flexibility when it came to it, because I finished I finished my master's degree with my master's thesis in 3 quarters, which was a little bit, I think, rushed on my end. I just was trying to get through everything I could. But the experience of it was very, very enriching, for sure. Like I got to, I think one of the best things about being in a fast-paced quarter system is you just have to learn like on the flow.
Yes.
And I think like I've heard a lot of employers over the years just be like, I mean, we love Drexel students because, you know, we can give them something and they can just learn it, you know, in a few weeks, and you don't have to worry about training them for months on together. And I think that was something that sort of came out during my master's, where all this learning in undergrad and getting used to learning at that pace sort of just came together. And I was juggling classes. At the time, I was also working on my second publication with my manager from GSK, and also working towards my thesis, and then applying to grad school. A lot of facets like moving together. But yeah, the graduate advising team at Drexel like was really, really supportive. Like found me like proper classes, because I really wanted to take classes that were more oriented towards the master's thesis work that I was doing. And so even though I took like general bioinformatics classes, I also wanted to sort of customize the degree, take some more classes which I had not taken. Since I'd done the undergraduate degree, a lot of courses overlapped with the master's. And so I just sort of ended up like substituting like ethics out for like a history of medicine class.
That's
Which
exactly
I
what
really
I did.
which I really ended up enjoying at the end of the day, and sort of I took like a business statistics class because I was doing a lot more statistics oriented work. And so that kind of flexibility, I think, is very, very helpful, especially when you're doing a graduate degree, because it definitely helped me finish my thesis a lot more faster, since I wasn't taking any classes which were off topic from what I was doing. It was mainly focused on a lot of the aspects of what I was like really interested in doing. And so that sort of like fast tracked or accelerated my degree, and they got me out within the timeline. And I also finished. That spring term was really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine. But
But
that's amazing. You were able to
it
do
was good.
external research and work at Drexel. That's so cool. And
Yeah,
I'm
it
glad
was a
Drexel's so flexible
thesis.
with all of that.
Yeah, because it was a thesis that was mainly like, I remembered like signing off the paperwork and stuff, and GSK was like, well, we own the research. I hope you know that,
Yeah.
whatever you're doing over here. And so that's not always easy for schools to give up. They would prefer students to actually work in that space, but I think like Drexel is very open to having industrial collaborations, and
Yes.
that's definitely something that, you know, should attract a lot of people, because you don't get too many schools saying, oh yeah, like totally, like go meet someone in industry and then bring a project over here.
No, and it's great that you had a space to do that. So how did you transition from your master's thesis into the PhD program you're at now?
So I so my master's thesis was mainly focused on like taking these giant physiological models, their data coming out of them, and sort of like using machine learning to predict clinical outcomes,
Very
which you
cool.
could actually deploy. Like the way I didn't know too much about how pharmaceutical companies run clinical trials, but my advisors were like, well, you know, this is like a prototype test that we're running. And if it's successful, then, you know, we can actually work full time with our time on this. And at the end of the day, your work will be like a foundation to like telling pharmacists and like clinics when we're running clinical trials, like, okay, we expect the disease to go down by this amount in this clinical scoring outcome. And so I work with psoriasis, and a lot of it is pretty subjective. It's dependent on the clinician who's actually scoring lesions and doing stuff. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is like the clinical aspects of things are a lot different from the scientific aspeccs of it. So it was really cool to see like that correlation. But it was helpful in transitioning because a lot of what I do right now is chem informatics oriented. So basically designing different drugs, like fragment-based design, and also looking at different physical properties of drugs. Like, is it going to go to where it needs to go? Is it going to crash out? And it was very much in line with the work that I did over CoOp. And so it sort of was helpful in a sense that during my master's, I got exposure to like collecting references. And of course, I need to give a big shout out to Jbud, the engineering librarian. Very severely underutilized resource in my opinion, and Drexel libraries, because he sort of like introduced me to EndNote and like citation managers, how to like import all of your citations into your Word document as you're writing your thesis out. And that was super helpful as well while writing publications, because at the time, like, I didn't know anything as much about how do you compile this or how do you do that. And it was just nice to have him, and also my manager from GSK, just be like, okay, this is how you work with EndNote. This is what you need at the end of the day. And that sort of was a very good transition, because during my time in my master's, I sort of learned a little bit more on how to work from home, how to set like proper research goals, and also how to have like meetings with my advisor, what I need to deliver, like what do I need to have for like a group meeting presentation. And so when I sort of like just came over to California, I started my PhD a little bit earlier with my first rotations. And then after that, by the fall, I was just like, yes, I'm committing to this lab. I'm going to be over here. But yeah, I think I learned a lot in my master's about setting like proper goals. And I think like everyone underestimates like how important that is, because research, in my current advisor's view, is one of those things where you can put in as much time as you want on it. And a lot of times that won't necessarily translate to better outcomes. So that's why like people have their own like eureka or epiphanies in research. And so it's very important to make sure that whatever goals you're actually setting are, appropriate, you can actually make them, and you're not stressing yourself out as you're trying to like get to the end of the research. Because at the end of the day, when I was doing my master's, it was more about just having fun learning newer languages. Like, I started off working with MATLAB and I was very proficient at it till the end of my undergrad. But then during my master's, I picked up Julia, R, Python, and then I rewrote my master's thesis in R. So it just was like, the process is sort of like more important than the actual outcome. And I think like that was emphasized by Drexel, and that sort of helped me like transition to being a full-time graduate student. And I'm in a computational lab right now, and so we're never like on campus most of the time. We're usually working from home half the time. And so having gotten that experience of what it's like to actually like work on a thesis from home during COVID was just like very, very helpful. And also like how to interact with people online and how to make it through, stuff like that.
Wow, that's such a great journey. And thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. Our time is running a little bit short, but I have to ask you one question that I like to ask everyone. What was your favorite food truck on campus?
Oh, Cucina for sure.
Okay, Food Truck
Yes.
Alley, yeah.
Yeah,
There's so many good ones. Like,
yeah, there are a lot of good ones, but I think Cucina is just on the top. Like, I remember standing in the lines to like get Cucina most of the time. So yeah, a lot of good memories in Food Truck Alley for sure.
I know. Yeah, you come right out of Biomedical Engineering there, and then I have a half an hour between my class and CAT, and you just see like the whole class standing there. Such a good time.
Yeah, it was. I remember I used to try to get in early the moment Cucina opened, just so that I could like get a box and just hold on to it as I went through classes. And then like, open it up at lunchtime and eat, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to eat anything if I stood in line, because I usually had classes in the afternoon. So yeah, that was definitely my favorite food truck. Like, a lot of the food trucks are really good, and they were actually pretty affordable for students at the end of the day. And I think like that's also one of the fun parts about living in Philadelphia and being at Drexel.
Well, thank you so much for everything today. I learned so much, a lot of insight into the whole Drexel career and how you got there now. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Like it's my pleasure to be here. I'm glad. I'm grateful if someone gets something out of it.
Yeah, I definitely did. So you can count on that.
That's great to hear.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you. Bye.